Uh, Hello, let me give you guys a minute. Normally, I put something on, and I totally forgot to. So, you know what? Uh, let's just drop it on, give myself that minute. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in tonight. I am Michael Grassi, and I've got a great show planned. And you are watching Get in Tune. I'm sorry about the intro. I forgot to click the button. Been a little frazzled lately here. I'm just trying to clean up my studio so it looks nice for you. But yeah, so let's get on with tonight. Um, I got some announcements towards the end of the show, but I will start with one. If you are at the Allentown, in the Allentown area this weekend, not February, sorry, what are we in? June 6th and 7th, I will be at the Lehigh Valley Comic Con with a kid and a comic at their table. Um, so yeah, tonight's guest, great guy. I've gotten to know him over the last couple of months. Very entertaining. He's had a long career, writing and editing comics, and just we're going to talk about a project that he worked on a long time ago that I actually was quite a fan of. So let's bring on Robert V. Conte. Hey, Robert.
Hey, Michael, how are you?
Doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me on the show.
All right. Oh, anytime. Hold on. I just got a text as the show started from our mutual friend Rich. Uh, so let me just tell him on the air, and I can't talk. Okay. Sorry. I just don't want any more texting. I'll turn my volume off here and sound off and all that fun stuff. So,
Okay.
well, first of all, thank you for coming on. I'm eager to chat with you about your career. You've been doing this for quite a while. Um, And before we get into the project that you want to discuss,
Sure.
and I want to know a bit more about you, kind of how you got into comics, writing, editing, the whole thing.
Well, I've been a comic book reader. Believe it or not, this summer, actually, yeah, next month. Okay.
Wow.
So my birthday is July 4, right? So I
Oh,
was
cool.
born, I'm going to be 56 in a month from tomorrow. And, for the spirit of 76, I was given a bunch of things for my birthday, and some of them were comic books. Some of those gifts were comic books. And I had already been familiar with the Batman TV show from the 60s. It was running
Mm,
in syndication already.
yeah.
And I didn't know Batman was an actual comic book. Like I was so, Batman was my number one superhero show, followed by the Spider-Man animated TV show from the 60s that ran in syndication.
Yeah.
And thirdly was Filmation's Shazam. And then, believe it or not, I wasn't a big fan of Adventures of Superman. It didn't resonate with me. Superman
The
the movie is another story, but
the Filmation Superman you're talking about.
no, I'm actually talking about the George Reeves because
Oh, the okay, yeah, yeah.
WPIX, they ran Batman first and Superman second, Lone Ranger afterward, and the color George Reeves shows didn't really appeal to me. It wasn't until I started watching the black and white ones in the early '80s on cable that I was like, wow, this stuff's terrific. So anyway, um, so then I became a comic nut. I made sure I had every issue of Batman, Detective, World's Finest, Batman Family was running at the time. So
Mhm.
then I got more into it. I just expanded my horizons. Then
Yeah.
my late mother and my late grandmother, they would bring home comics for me when they went to the grocery store or when they went to the newsstands. Um, my dad would bring home stuff occasionally, and then I discovered the back issue store. I grew up on Long Island, New York, and at
Mhm.
the time, there were two key back issue stores. One was the Bat Cave, which is still in existence today. It's now called Long Island Comics, but it's the same owner. He's been there almost 50 years. And then Heroes World, which was a retail chain, but they also had a distribution hub. And it
Mhm.
turned out that my first job was working at a comic book store. Heroes World was one of our distributors. And then Heroes World offered me a job, and it was a good opportunity. So I took it, and I wound up being district manager for the two New York retail stores and the New York distribution hub. And I got to meet so many great people, comic
Yeah.
book retailers, publishers. Back then we used to have these retailer summits that, key retailers and new retailers would come all over for. I got to see, firsthand how books were selling and what was selling. I was working in comics at the time that the first independent boom happened, where Cerebus and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all that stuff was really hot. So fortunately, I just had this great exposure to everybody that's in comics,
Yeah.
and fortunately, I've been able to do everything in comics except for actually draw it. You know, so I was given an opportunity to self-publish a comic book, an anthology, in 1989 called "Utterly Strange Stories." I was writing for Rock and Roll Comics. I did a comic on Kiss, and then Led Zeppelin, and New Kids on the Block, and then during my time at Heroes World, I had met Steve Stern, who co-created Zen Intergalactic Ninja.
Mhm.
Wound up working with him for a while. Then I moved on to Malibu Comics as one of their editors for the Rocket Comics line, which was their music-based line.
Okay.
Then I moved on to Dark Horse Comics, did that for a year. Then I took a 3-year hiatus to work for the Rock Rip Kiss, actually.
Oh
Came
wow.
back into comics around early 2001, mid 2001, and I've been here ever since in all various capacities.
Wow. That's amazing. That sounds like a really really interesting group. I have more questions for you about that
Yeah,
than
I tell you, I don't know where all the years went because it's gone by so fast.
yeah.
I still remember, being 19, working at, Collector's Kingdom was the first store I worked at, and then Heroes World. And I remember that stuff like it was yesterday. I mean, I remember the day Tom McFarlane's Spider-Man 1 actually came into the store. We had a line all the way around the block to buy it when the first Vertigo titles hit. I mean, got some great, great memories from those days. I met a lot of awesome creators and got to work with a bunch of them too. So, you know, it's never work when you're enjoying what you're doing, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, I've been very
Exactly.
blessed that way.
Let me just say hi to Che in the audience, and Rich is in the audience watching. Hey guys. And yeah, no, it's interesting because you know I've been in and out of the industry for years because my audience knows I've had health issues and I always needed to have a job with benefits, and unfortunately comics doesn't always work that way. So
Yeah.
I've been in and out doing things. But and it was funny, I was driving my father-in-law earlier today, and we were talking about comics, and I was telling him about the very first store that I became my comic shop, because we were talking how some comic shops are dying, and how the people at that comic shop. I grew up in Mayapack, New York, and there was a store in Brewster, New York, which was about maybe a 20-minute drive, and it was run by this great couple, Tom and Sue. And Sue was like the sweetest person to me when I got into comics. She kind of taught me, like she learned what I like and really showed me the way on stuff. And when I
Yeah.
started learning about the indie world, because when I first, you were mentioning how you loved Batman, you didn't realize it was a comic. I kind of was the same way because I knew him from animated cartoons like the Super Friends and things,
Mm.
and then when I found out they were comic books, I was like, I want to read the guys from TV. But as I moved on and matured as a reader and started reading indies and European books and all this stuff, she was the one who kind of taught me all of those. Like I had this new thing I found out about, tell me about it, and she would tell me if I'd like it or not and show me where it was in the store, or just save stuff and suggest things for me that she, you know, I don't have many stores. There's not many stores that act like that anymore that I
No,
that,
it's funny. Running a comic store where you get to see people, when I first got into comic book retail,
Mhm.
comics came out on Fridays. And then at some
Okay.
point it changed to Wednesday.
Yeah.
And, you saw the same faces every week.
Mhm.
And, you develop a rapport and you have friendships and things like that. And believe it or not, many of the people that were originally customers at the stores I worked at are dear friends to this day. So we're
Yeah.
talking, almost 40 years of friendship.
Wow.
And it's amazing. And, we reminisce about the old days, before the Michael Keaton Batman movie came out. You weren't a very popular teenager to be walking around with a Batman t-shirt, It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like today I laugh when I think about the hundreds, if not thousands, of different designs of a Batman shirt you could buy. When I was growing up, there were two. Sears catalog had two Batman t-shirts, one or the other. It was either the drawing of the character or the logo symbol.
Yeah.
And it was funny. When I was in high school, you get called out on stuff like that. Like, oh, you like Batman? What's wrong with you? Stuff like that. So it's interesting how the pop culture, the culture of this country and all over the world has just become so accepting to
Yeah.
comics and pop culture in general.
It's interesting because in the '90s, and I really think it has a lot to do with the Michael Keaton Batman. But there's only like 6 years. I'm 50, so like
Mm.
you said at 19, so I was probably around 89. You were starting to work in the stores. That's the year I entered my first comic book shop. Was
87, actually.
87. Okay, so
In
for
87.
me it was 89. I was 13. I was I guess I was either late seventh grade or early eighth grade is when I started buying. My cousin had comics, so I read some before and knew that they existed, but I was always more of a strip guy. I always liked reading the newspaper strips, and
Oh,
that was the
okay.
type of stuff
Okay.
that I was into. It wasn't until I was like, "Oh, this is amazing." But I think in the '90s, after the Michael Keaton movie, then you get Batman the animated series and the X-Men come out. And all it was something that people you wouldn't think about in my high school were chatting about before classes started or something, or at the lunch table.
No,
So it was a thing where I think that movie kind of allowed it to be okay. And now these days, it's you know,
oh, like I said, I have very distinct memories. Summer of '88. I
mhm.
remember when I wore a Batman T-shirt getting picked on the subway, and literally a year later, everybody's wearing Batman T-shirts in the
Yeah,
city. I mean, it was quite an eye opener in that
you know,
context.
I always tell this story that when I was a kid, I loved all animation. I taught myself to draw by recording the TV, playing back, pausing a frame, and drawing what I saw. So I think I really developed an animated style that way. But a lot of the shows I watched would be considered anime these days.
Mm.
So even though they didn't have the word animation, we just called them cartoons. You know, it was very Japanese style of drawing, and that was unpopular for a long time.
That's
So
true.
people used to make fun of me for drawing this style, and then the anime boom happened in the '90s, and by then I was in high school trying to get ready to college and realizing I'm probably never going to draw this for a living. I should learn how to draw more American style, and I started focusing on that. But around 90, I want to say 92, 93, we had the anime like boom
Hmm.
in here where like all of a sudden it was you can name Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho, Sailor Moon, whatever. They were just all over the place, and everybody started drawing like that. And when I was drawing, Looney Tunes, I was getting made fun of because they're like, "Why aren't you drawing like this?" I'm like, "2 years ago, you were making fun of me for drawing like that."
Yeah, it's really entertaining how the trends change, and they expect
Yeah,
you to just flop over overnight and adjust, and it's like, well,
yeah,
my experience with anime is a little different. I grew up. One of the shows that I loved watching was Battle of the Planets, which we
love that.
now know is Gotchaman, but
Yeah,
the Battle of the Planets will always be near and dear to my heart. And then I think I was around 18 when Akira had a limited edition, a limited engagement over at one of the
mm,
theaters. Saw a midnight showing of that. Absolutely loved Akira. And then I think the next movie the same place showed was this. I didn't know at the time until I was actually watching it, but it was like a triple X anime movie called Yorochika Doji. I think Kingdom of the Overlord or
oh my god, yeah,
something
you know what?
crazy. Like, what is this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love it, Kira. I just watched it like 2 or 3 months ago
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I grew up. Battle of the Planets was one of my all-time favorites. Um, Gundam, Star Blazers, Captain Harlock. Like, I love all that old stuff. I
Mm.
prefer that to a lot of the newer stuff that we consider the '90s. We had some good stuff, and today we have a mixture of things. But I still go back and watch the old stuff. I think that's the best. And even for reading, when I collect books, I have collections of Captain Harlock and what would be Star Blazers, where it's space battleship Yamato and um, Gundam and all those things. But anyway, it was I remember when I don't remember the year, but I remember Cartoon Network started the Toonami. They're like, we're gonna do a Japanese movie or whatever, like weekly or whatever. And the first one was Lensman,
Okay.
and I loved it. I thought it was great. I didn't realize it was a public domain character at the time, or maybe it wasn't public domain at the time, but it was a really cool story. And I'm a big Green Lantern fan, and I didn't realize how much Lensman actually affected the Silver Age creation of Green Lantern.
Interesting.
And so I was like, this makes sense how much I love it. And then I was in college, and I had a friend. His name was Tad, and Tad was a big like anime guy, got stuff in from overseas, not even subtitle, and he's like, I'm going to make you a tape of stuff that you will love. And he gave me some really cool things. And then on the last, I believe it was the last movie on there, it was an X-rated thing. It came out and said, I forget if it said, Penthouse or Hustler. And I'm like, what the hell is this guy giving me? I watched the first like 5 minutes of it, and it was. I don't really want to go into it, but it was a kid pleasing himself in a locker room or
Oh,
something
geez.
while girls changed,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was like, oh, and I was like, what the hell is this? So I fast forwarded through a bunch of scenes just to see if this was the whole movie, and there was a little nymph character pleasing himself as he just walked around the screen, like floated around. I'm like, I don't know. I stopped it at that point, and I went in the next day to school, and I told Tad, I'm like, you're nuts. Everything else you gave me was great, but that one movie,
Hmm.
I just sat there thinking, how can an animator animate this?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's
You
what I
really
was in
think about
school
it.
for. I was in
Yeah.
school for animation, and I'm like, how is somebody even animating this stuff? Like,
Yeah, that was that Yorochika Doji was pretty crazy. I never even if I had known what it was, I wouldn't have gone to see it. I just said, oh, now I'm on this Akira thing. Let me see that. And I also remember Marvel's Tomb of Dracula was
mhm,
adapted as an anime feature, if I remember correctly, by Rankin Bass, if I remember
possibly, I don't
correctly.
remember.
Yeah, it was like done in anime style, and for the time, I just thought this thing was just
Yeah,
absolutely gorgeous. And even though it had that anime look to it, they still used Gene Colan's like model for Dracula for it.
yeah.
It can't, man, I don't even know why that's not on video. That should be easily accessible because I would love watching that again. But anyway, we've digressed.
Yes, yes. Let's get back on. Listen, it happens on the show. It's bound
Yeah.
to happen. It's okay. So let me ask you. I just before we get into the project that we're here to talk about, I just want to know when you got into the industry and you started. You mentioned was his name Steve, who's co-creator of Zen. Was that the first project that you worked on, or what was your first like in the
No,
comics?
the first comics I wrote were 3 issues of rock and roll comics:
Okay,
Kiss, New Kids on the Block, and Led Zeppelin.
okay.
And then I did a self-published anthology. I worked with other creators, but I published it. It was called Utterly Strange Stories.
Okay.
It had 3 stories in it. I co-wrote one. It David Quinn, who was the writer, who's still the writer of Faust, he wrote a story that Joe Linsner from Cry for Dawn drew. It's an obscure story. It's the only time it's been published, to my knowledge. So it's a hard one to get. And then we had a bunch of other creators on there. So there was a story in there that I co-wrote, and then Zen.
Mm,
The first story, full story I wrote for Zen, which was published in early '92, was called Explorative Beginnings, and it was basically a tale of Zen's first adventure after leaving home.
okay.
And I got to work with the legendary Ross Andrew and Mike Esposito. They were
Mm,
drawing Zen at the time.
yeah.
So Ross is probably best known for the drawing the Superman versus Spider-Man, the first treasury-sized edition of
Mm,
that. He also drew the first appearance of the Punisher and Spidey 129.
okay.
But Ross and Mike will always have a soft spot in my heart because one of the very first back issues I bought when I was started to collect Batman back issues
Mm,
was Batman number 213, which was a retelling of the Golden Age Robin's origin. And I did not know it at the time, but Ross and Mike drew that story, and I just absolutely loved it. So when I finally connected the dots, Mike Esposito was actually a customer of mine at the first store I worked at,
okay.
and his wife owned a Carvel franchise that was near my high school. So I knew Mike years before we actually got to work together. So that was a great opportunity.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I've been on and off with Zen since that 1991 meeting,
Mm,
and now we're working on a book called Zen Alternate Visions, which is a collection of all the rare and scarce Zen stories that were published, and will include some non-published stuff, some Zen
mm,
archive, and our black and white stories are being remastered in full color. And it's a very exciting project. I'm looking forward to
yeah.
it. We're going to launch the Kickstarter in about a week, and there'll be information on my website all about it. And it's going to be fun.
Awesome. Awesome. So, okay, let's get into why you're here. And
Okay.
we're going to talk now. Here's the thing, before we get into actually the story, I need to tell you something. Um,
I didn't
you know,
do it.
now we're here to talk about the Tex Avery comics that
Yeah.
you worked on.
Okay.
And you did it for Dark Horse. And I'm a huge, as I said, I went to school for animation. I'm a big Tex Avery fan. To me, he's the king of comedic timing. Like, he's the one who perfected it for animation. But I love Tex Avery so much. I have to show you a poster that I keep in my studio. All right. Now my studio's changed positions. This used to be right in front of my like Cintiq, but I can still look up. So I'm just going to turn the camera around.
Okay.
Oh yeah, this right here. Please pardon any mess. But I have a beautiful Red Hot
Oh,
poster,
wow.
and right behind her, I know it might be hard. It's her dance cycle that Preston Blair did. Obviously, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's,
Oh, that's
it's got
beautiful.
a print of his signature there. But yeah, that was the centerpiece of my studio for a very long time until I changed the positioning around.
Great piece.
Thank you. Yeah, that's how much I'm into Tex. I love it. So what year did this project come out?
It started. Let's see. I started working at Dark Horse Comics in late '94.
Hmm.
The series debuted in '95 and lasted until sometime in '96.
Okay, because I know I have a few of the droopy issues. I gotta look. I don't know if I have the others. I didn't get a chance to look at anything. Just like back here, my studio is a mess. Everything in the front of me is one of those where you gotta place a step here, you gotta place a step here, that type of thing.
Sure.
Now you did send me some files, and do you mind if I open them up and share the screen so people can at least see the covers that
Oh,
we're
please
talking?
do. Yeah, please do.
Awesome, awesome. So, is there anything specific you'd like to start with?
Well, we started. Let's see. Wolf and Red was our first published series. We did Wolf and Red first.
I'm just trying to find which where there are. Oh, it was just called Comics and Stories, or
No,
what?
no, that's the last one. Wolf
Okay.
and Red number 1. You'll see Red.
Oh, I
She's
see it.
on the cover.
Okay, let me just make sure I'm on the right one here. Um, window right here. Okay, share.
There we go.
Yeah. So let me see. Can I center this better? Okay, there we go. So this was Wolf and Red. Tell me first before we even get into talking about this specific book. How did this project come about?
Okay, well, when I started working at Dark Horse, I was an associate editor, and certain titles were assigned to me, but I was asked at one point, where your passions are, where your hobbies are, so on and so forth. And when I looked at the list of potential books that I could edit, because they had a lot of stuff coming in, Star Wars and Predator and Aliens at the time were among their 3 top licensed books, and other editors were already working on them. So while that was going on, I co-edited a James Bond 007 miniseries, and then after that, I got started on Godzilla and this book. The way this came about, Mike Richardson, who's was the founder of Dark Horse Comics and who recently left the company, he had a deep love for Tex Avery, and he actually loaned me. I had a Laserdisc player in my apartment at the time, and when I was assigned the book, he had loaned me Tex Avery's screwball comedies on the Laserdisc version of it. So
Okay.
now, at the time, Laserdisc was considered creme de la creme of home video systems, superior to VHS. So I spent the weekend. I watched every single Laserdisc in that set so I could give it back to him the following Monday, and I was just cracking up laughing because a lot of those cartoons were ones I had already seen as a child growing up. Because before the Batman show aired on PIX, they had the Tom and Jerry hour.
Yeah.
So a lot of Droopy shorts and various other MGM cartoons ran during that hour. So I didn't realize how edited they were at the time, but I recognized a lot of these cartoons and the characters immediately. King Size Canary is still one of my favorites of all time. And Droopy is, of all the Tex Avery characters in the series, Droopy's my favorite. He's always been one of my favorite characters. So anyway, when I was assigned this series, initially, my supervising editor, who worked right under my editor in chief, he wanted me to use talent that he had already procured for some of his books that were looking for other jobs to do. But I wanted to work with people who were very familiar with the material. So as time went on, I was looking for talent that were very passionate about these characters and very passionate about Tex Avery's work. And I was very fortunate to meet Scott Shaw, who's a longtime, comics, and he was in animation, and he actually worked with Tex Avery.
Oh, I
So
didn't know that about him. I
yeah.
actually interviewed Scott many, well, actually, yeah, during the pandemic, I interviewed him, and we never discussed that.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah. Scott worked with Tex in the '70s,
okay.
toward the end of Tex's career.
Okay.
So obviously it was a no brainer to bring him on board.
Yeah.
And he did some stories, and then other creators I knew that were very passionate about these characters, like Paul Castiglia and Henry Gilroy was one of the people he brought on board. Terry Moore, who does Strangers in Paradise, he loved
Yeah.
Wolf and Red, so he did a Wolf and Red story, which is
Cool.
absolutely terrific. So it was great working with people that knew the material and wanted to contribute to their canon, which was awesome. Um, at the time, these characters were owned by Hanna Barbera, so anything that we did had to be approved by them before it could go to print. And of course, they had certain criteria they wanted us to meet, or there were certain things that they didn't want us to do, even though they were in some of the original cartoons. So working with a licensor and having to get their approvals, there's always pros and cons with that. But my one of my favorite memories, we had hired Milton Knight, animator slash artist Milton Knight, to draw a story, and his story was a home run. It was the only story that Hanna Barbera approved on the first submission. That had never happened before.
Wow.
So yeah, it was great. I have to say, I had edited about 8 different titles for Dark Horse during the time I was there, but this series, uh, I was very blessed to have such a creative team that was so passionate about the material. And honestly, they all met their deadlines or handed the stuff in earlier. That's how much they enjoyed it.
Wow.
Um,
That's great.
Bob Fingerman, the amount of output that he put out in that year on the Screwball Squirrel series and a couple of other backups that he did was just terrific. I loved working with him. I loved working with everybody on the team. It was, like I said, it's great when you're talking to an illustrator or a writer and you know that they love the material. Like it's not just another job for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I have an opportunity to work on something I loved as a kid or as an adult, or I'm working on material that created by a king of animation. So yeah, it was that year was just terrific in that sense. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's all. So, there was what, 3 issues of this. I don't know if this is in order, so I'm gonna just
Yeah, yeah,
click.
that's the first issue. Yeah.
All right, that's 2 of 3.
Yep.
And did I get? Come on, click. Oh, nope, that's not the other one. I don't know where. Let's see. My mouse is not clicking the way I want. Hold on. Let me go to my pen up here. See if that works. No, something. Oh wait. There we go. That's droopy. I'm sorry. I didn't get a chance to organize these the way I wanted
It
to.
was all
Oh, there
perfect,
it was.
Michael. There you go. That's Droopy 3.
Sorry.
Okay.
Let's just put that back in. The whole.
There you go. There's Wolf and Red 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wolfer. Before I forget, I just want to say hi to a few people. So we see Rich. Che left to go to bed, so I don't know where you're watching from, but thanks for tuning in. And Carl is watching too. So hi, Carl.
Hello, Carl. Hello, Rich.
And yeah, so now when you're coming up, or so on this book here, or any of them, did you write the stories or just edit the stories?
I edited the stories with exception of one.
Mhm.
There was an opportunity to put a story in 19, I believe it was 1995. Yes, 1995. Dark Horse at the time was publishing something called the San Diego Comic Con Convention comic, or
Okay.
something to that effect. So it was a book that was I believe it was given away at the San Diego Comic, and as fate would have it, they had a few pages that were free. So I, jockeyed into position, asked my editor in chief, "Hey, please, would you mind if I wrote this?" And because at the time the company really did not want their editors also writing comics,
Yeah.
But it was just a time crunch, you know. So it was like, look, I could write this over the weekend, hand it in on Monday, get the approval, and we'll move forward. And it seemed to work out that way. We did a adaptation of Droopy and the Red Baron. I think I sent you those graphics,
I
and
don't know if I have the graph. I'll look, but this is the San Diego cover.
yeah, and I sent you a PDF showing the Droopy story.
Oh yes. All right. I can let me open that up and I can share that as well.
Yeah.
And let's turn this off. Uh,
So, so what happened? Like I said, I wrote the story, but we didn't have an artist, and it had to be done in a very short period of time. I think it had to be drawn within a week or 10 days maximum. The good news at the time was, oh, there it is. Yeah. So the good news at the time was the book was being printed in black and white, so we didn't have time to get it colored. And I just happened to call Bill Morrison, who was doing all of our covers
mhm.
for the entire, you know, the first three series, Droopy, Wolf and Red, and Screwball Squirrel. Bill and his assistant at the time, Nathan Kane, they did all those covers, and they're absolutely gorgeous. So I was just on the phone with him talking about a deadline for a cover, and I said, "Yeah, you know, when I get off the phone with you, I've got to find somebody to draw this 3 pager." And he's like, "Oh, you called me at the right time. I have the time." I said, "You're kidding me." So we were collaborating together on this, and it's the rarest of all the Dark Horse Tex Avery stories published because half of the Tex Avery collectors don't even know this is out there.
Hmm.
It was only printed once in that comic book. It hasn't been reprinted, and yeah, it was terrific. It was terrific to have somebody as talented as Bill Morrison, you know, draw my script. That was a personal highlight of my time at Dark Horse. Very
Yeah,
grateful for that.
this is gorgeous. Wow.
That was my favorite Tex Avery character, Droopy. So, you know.
Yeah. Wow. This looks great. Love this. Um, Now, even since you edited, I'll ask you a question about editing because you're getting. I mean, did you just focus on the art, or I mean, on the story, or did you also edit, the artwork on here?
Oh, everything.
Everything.
You know, yes, the way I edited comics was basically because these were anthology stories or short stories.
Mhm.
You know, the method I had at the time was to get you know, several creative teams on the
Mhm.
various stories. You know, so that the books would be on time because we always had to allow for the licensor to request changes or make
Yeah.
changes. And so because of that, unlike a creator-owned book where you're working with the editor and together you just come up with the story and the art and it's all done because you don't have to get approval from anyone. This one required constant submissions to Hanna-Barbera. We had to submit the script and wait for, you know, their feedback. Then we had to submit the pencils and the inks and then the colors. It
Yeah.
was like a five-step process to get a story done.
Yeah.
So because of that, and as time went on, and everybody was more comfortable working together, you know, the five-step process became pretty much a three-step process. But still, you know, there were times where out of the blue they would request changes that we didn't anticipate. So then production had to stop. We had to go back and make whatever changes that they wanted. That's why I was so grateful for Milton Knight's story because when we submitted it, literally got a fax back in the days of faxing, gang. Got a fax the next day. Terrific, approved. That's like what?
That's fun.
So, you know, hats off to Milton there. He did a great job. So, but yeah, other than that, there's one story that most people don't know about. I'll share with you.
Sure. I just want to say hi to actually share the story. Then we got a question from the audience.
Oh
So
no, let's get the question. Go ahead.
the
Let's get,
question is from, I can't even say the name right now. Is is that Malik Watson? Says, when editing, were any ideas you wanted to pitch?
Oh, sure. Actually, this kind of leads into what I was about to say.
Oh,
So,
okay, go for
okay, so unbeknownst to me at the time, I learned this later.
it. Mhm.
Hanna-Barbera had licensed out newspaper strips of Tom and Jerry, and Droopy had appeared in there.
Mhm.
So when I met with Hanna-Barbera in LA, I actually had a in-person meeting with them about stuff we could do. We had wanted to basically expand the Tex Avery, universe, and do more stories. Let's say King Size Canary, or do different adaptations. We actually looked into the idea of crossing over Droopy with Tom and Jerry, bring Tom and Jerry in for a one shot, but that just wasn't going to work financially.
Mhm.
Uh, but it would have been a great idea. But as we're going through the archive at Hanna-Barbera, there turned out to be, I believe it was a 6-page story by Carl Barks that was published in the 50s. And they had the original stats in their archive, the
Mhm.
original black and white stats. So of course my mouth dropped to the floor, just like the cartoon where Wolf, his mouth drops to the floor whenever Red's in the room. So holding these stats, I mean, I salivated. I said, "Oh my gosh, we've got to
Yeah.
do this! It's complete. It's ready to roll." And it took a while. They had to do some due diligence to make sure they owned the story, even though it was an archive. Like, they had to
Mhm.
make sure there was a paper trail, and Mr. Barks was paid for that story. So we were this close to having a Carl Barks Droopy story in one of the issues, and then we found out that the story was published by a small press publisher, changing the name Droopy to something like some different dog, and they colored him brown instead of the white. So that totally ruined the idea of it. But
Yeah.
the fact that we almost had a Carl Barks story in one of those issues was just the idea of it was just out of this world. And they actually hold original stats that were photographed from a Carl Barks artwork.
Yeah.
Was just an incredible experience for
Yeah.
me.
I got something to show you since you're talking about Carl Barks right now. I got this. I was down in Florida back in November, and I was at Tate's Comic Shop, which is in Lauderdale Hill, about a half hour from, uh, uh, what is it, Fort Lauderdale. All right.
Yeah.
I found this book.
Look at that.
Okay. I mean, you can see how big it is, literally covering me
Sure,
here.
sure. That's like archive edition size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is his like MGM droopy cartoon. Oh, why is that a little dented there? I'm very careful with this book. But like, my God, you can see
Oh yeah, look at that.
that. And if I move over,
Oh wow.
these here, you got to look at. Let me just looking at this here is then. I mean, this is amazing. I have flipped through this book. I don't know how many times. Page 13, I think, is his droopy. Just to, well, actually, yeah, where it would be. But he had some very, yeah, the Happy Hound.
Happy Hound. There you go.
Yeah,
Happy Hound.
look
Yep.
at that.
Wow.
Gorgeous stuff. I don't know how many times I have flipped through this book. But
That's
yeah,
amazing. That's amazing. When did that come out? I'm gonna have to
uh,
try to find one of those.
I don't know. I'll tell you right now, I paid 100 for it,
Yeah.
which I'm
It's a good
sure
price.
is a
It's a
good
good,
price
yeah.
for it. Let me
Yeah.
find the copy right here. Um, uh, Copyright. So it's been printed a couple of times. This one came out in 2022. So 2016, 2018, and 2022
Wow.
were the 3 years. Yeah. Man,
And,
this was,
and that book is a comprised of original art.
yeah, it's his artwork from when he worked on these here.
Wow.
Cover
So
art.
that whoever the private collector was that has those pages, that's terrific.
There are some though that you got to look at. Like here, you got to look at sideways. He drew, you know, so you're holding it this way. Oh,
That's great.
freaking gorgeous! I love this book. Anyway, put it down for now.
So that reminds me.
Yeah.
Um, so at some point, the three issues of Droopy
Hmm.
were collected into a French edition, translated into French, and then published in France.
Yeah.
And I was at San Diego Comic Con. This had to be maybe 2000 or 2001. Yeah, it was before 9/11. And one of the book dealers at the time, Alan Spiegel, he just happened to have a copy of this Droopy French edition. And I'm like, I never saw this. What is that? And it was all the stories. And, fortunately, all the credits and everything were correct because
Hmm.
sometimes foreign editions make mistakes. That's all another issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was so happy to have this book finally. I'm like, oh my gosh, this stuff was, almost 10 years ago, and here's a French edition of it. So I'm very proud of that to actually, have that France just absolutely loves Tex Avery and all their stuff. There's like merchandise out there you can't get here. So that was a great thing to see, and that probably is on one of my bookshelves. Which I'm happy about.
I'd love to see that. Rich, well, hi to Dylan. And Rich says Carl Barks also drew Barney Bear as backups in the 40s Tom and Jerry comics.
Yes, he did. That's
I
correct.
think there's a Barney in there. I don't know. Oh, wait, no, he's on the floor. Next thing I see is Alex Toth up there, the next book next to it.
And I have to give Me TV and Jerry Beck a lot of credit. Cartoon Research is Jerry Beck because
Mhm.
they've been able to start airing a lot of these old cartoons again on Me TV Tunes and Tune In with Me and then on Me TV, and it's great that they air these things complete, unedited.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll tell you when I have nothing to do at night, like after I stop for the night at
mhm.
8 p.m. I start on Me TV and it's like Looney Tunes and Tune In. I think that's Tune In with Me at 9 or whatever.
Yeah.
I just watch for a good 2 to 3 hours straight of all those cartoons.
Oh yeah, and it's wonderful. I mean, I haven't seen, and this is a Tex Avery short, Porky's Duck Hunt, in
Mm.
probably 40 years, and they aired it the other day, and I said, "Oh, this is terrific." Just it's gonna. I hope it creates a new interest in this current generation for this old animation because it deserves it. It really
Oh,
does.
absolutely,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm I know I say this all the time to everybody, but like it was watching those that made me do what I want to do. That made me want to learn animation,
yeah.
and I learned. There was a time I probably could still do it if I study hard enough again. But there was a time I could come into a middle of a Looney Tunes cartoon and tell you who the director was just by how characters were either drawn or by how they were being used.
Oh sure,
It
oh
was.
sure. Yeah.
I was like that much of a fan, and it was the and like here's the thing, like it's funny because sometimes I consider myself a comedy snob, and I feel it's because of those cartoons, because they really to this day still make me laugh out loud.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that when I go back into their time period when these cartoons were being made, the people that they grew up on was vaudeville and silent movie, so they had to understand, like I'm a big Abbott and Costello fan, so wordplay comes out of the vaudevillian humor, and that was in Looney Tunes. When you look at the slapstick specifically of like silent movies, because they had to be able to express stuff, that way. Couldn't hold up a card for a
Yeah,
while to read.
yeah.
So like I look at, and then I go back and I look at the old stuff, and I just see, and it's if you watch them, it's like a master class in comedy. It really is.
Listen, it's funny because as I told you, being a big Droopy fan, there was a
Mhm.
while where I collected everything Droopy, if I get
Yeah.
my hands on it. And the magic of those cartoons from the 40s and the 50s, when they reintroduced Droopy in I think the late 70s as part of the Tom
Mhm.
and Jerry Saturday Hour or whatever it was,
Yeah.
it was so disappointing because it took away that magic that was there was gone. As a matter of fact,
Mm.
I even though I loved watching animation during the week, I could not watch most Saturday morning cartoons because I just felt like the quality just dropped off so badly.
Yeah.
And not just with the Tex Avery characters, like almost every character that got adapted in the late '70s through the you know late '80s,
Mm.
it was just chucking it out. It just wasn't. It was just creating product. It wasn't making sure that the stuff was hysterical. And it wasn't until Ralph Bakshi brought back Mighty Mouse
Mickey
with
Mouse. Yeah.
Bat and all that stuff. That's when cartoons for adults started being funny again, and then with the Ren and Stimpy and everything after that. But yeah, it's really funny. Like I said, like you said, I can watch a Tex Avery cartoon today, that early stuff, and just whether it's for MGM or Warner Brothers, whatever, and just cackle out loud, you know. And part of it's the nostalgia effect because it brings you back to when you were a kid watching them,
Mhm.
but the other part of it is that they're so well written, and the way that they were animated was just so top notch that you just can't beat it. You just
Yeah.
can't beat it.
Now let me ask you this: as an editor, you hire these writers and artists and stuff, and this is a question that I don't think I've ever really thought of for myself. But when you look at these Tex Avery cards, any of them, they're hysterical. We can all guarantee on that. And like I said, I think he was like a master of timing. You could see him experimenting in his early stuff for how long to pause stuff for, or whatever. But it always worked. And how do you translate something like that from the screen to the page? Because certain things have to happen in motion, for it to really have that big laugh out loud moment.
Sure.
You know.
That's what's funny is that, as you said, when you're adapting an animated short, just like when you're adapting a movie, right?
Mhm.
You have to do it in a way that is going to entertain the reader in a different context than being able to watch it on TV. Like in other words, you have to take those raw elements that make those characters attractive in the first place, create a story that allows the imagination in other words, if you're a fan of those 1940s 1950s shorts and you know how these characters operate already, so if you're reading these comic books, the way to tell if something's adapted properly or not is like, if you can throw yourself into that world of those characters
Yeah.
and you're laughing because it's like, wow, this guy or this team got it dead on, and this person did this really, terrific. The fan mail, it's funny because back then people wrote in, about how they
Mhm.
liked their comics before email. You'd get, I remember getting, letters every week from comic book readers, and Godzilla was number one as far as getting fan mail in my books, but the Tex Avery stories were number two, which
Mhm.
because I was editing other books like The Shadow and Doc Savage and things like that. So the fact that Tex Avery's books were getting that much fan mail was interesting in itself, and it was so cool because we had very few negative critiques. It
Mhm.
was more like, "Are you guys going to do more? Are you guys going to do more? Oh, could you use this character? Could you bring back Blackie and all those other great stuff?"
Yeah.
So it felt like we were going in the right direction. Like I said, Hanna-Barbera, at the time, they had their own, you know, set of rules that we had to abide by. But there were times we tried to push the envelope to see how far we could go. Because I mean, look, Red's supposed to be a sexy, dancer lady, right?
Yeah.
So we pushed it as far as we could before, we were told, oh, no, 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 they can't, the skirt can't be up that high, boys, that kind
Now,
of thing.
I do
So,
have a question because it was the '90s, and I remember they had a cartoon out. Um, the Tom and Jerry kids, where Droopy guest starred, and they had Droopy's Mysteries, I think it was called, back
right.
then during the '90s.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
that affect anything you could do with the stories because they were being out? You said Hanna Barbera kind of had rules you needed to follow. Was it
Yeah.
because you were trying to follow old time stuff and there was a new thing going on? Like what was?
Well, I purposefully stayed away from watching that stuff. I didn't
Okay.
want to be influenced by it at all.
Hmm.
The idea was, for it's funny, the entire year plus I worked at Dark Horse Comics, I think my total speaking time with Mike Richardson might have been 15 minutes or less. you know, he called me into his office to talk about Tex Avery, and he wanted to, let me know what his favorite cartoons were, and at some point, if there's a way to adapt them, and what creators he wanted to work with, and such like that. But I purposefully, because I remember Hanna Barbera would send me screeners. Screeners were VHS tapes that you could watch that had their time codes and stuff on it if you needed reference material, right? So what was I decided, I said, I don't want to be influenced by any of the 80s or the 90s stuff at all. I want to
Yeah.
stick with the way these characters were originally intended. And it's funny because Droopy changed quite a bit in the first 10 years too. I mean,
Mm.
he was not consistently drawn. If you look at the original shorts versus the CinemaScope shorts and stuff. So all those characters were evolving over time anyway,
Yeah.
but there's a distinct period where you say, okay, yeah, the gags up until this point were terrific to use for reference or as inspiration to write our own stuff. And that was a lot of fun. I tell you, it's not a bad job when you're watching Laserdisc cartoons all day and making sure that the stories you're drafting fit within that realm. Not a bad
Yeah.
deal. Not a bad
Now let me. We got a question here. How do you feel about the portrayal of Tex Avery characters during the animation renaissance?
Okay.
Um, Now, I don't know which era they're talking about. I mean, I think animation's had a couple of different renaissance, but
Hmm.
if you go, I always go when I hear the term renaissance, like animation renaissance, I go to like Disney bringing out the Little Mermaid in '86, and everything kind of changed up until about, I would say I would end it probably with Pocahontas or so, like in late '90s.
Okay.
So I guess that's a target area to go with.
It to me, the characters, because now they're considered intellectual property, and the companies that own them, their vested interest is to make sure that they're, basically selling to the kids of today. But a lot of that stuff got sanitized because of it, like a lot of those innuendo jokes that the adults would get while watching the cartoon. It's funny, the Batman TV show is a perfect example of this. When you're a kid, you take all that stuff in the Batman TV show at face value. You
Yeah,
watch it again as an adult, you're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they got away with writing that," or, like,
yeah,
it was an episode where Adam West and Lee Merriweather, they go to, she didn't play Catwoman in this one, she played a different character, but she goes to Adam West, Bruce Wayne. Oh, would you like to come in for some cookies and milk? And he's like, no, it's past my bedtime before midnight. I mean, as an adult, you're like, oh my gosh. But when you're a kid, you take it at face value. So anyway, these cartoons today, they don't have that kick for the adult to get something out of it. In other
yeah,
words, it's just like, okay, it's just this bland deliverable. That's why Gary Wolf, as a matter of fact, Gary Wolf was very kind and posted on his, Gary Wolf, who is the creator of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. A
yeah,
couple of months ago, he posted this beautiful acknowledgement of the Tex Avery comics that we did. And I was very touched by that because he saw the effort that got put into it. And to read something like that 32, 33 years later is just amazing that these comics meant something to so many people.
yeah,
But back to your question, the last time these characters were interpreted properly was the Who Framed Roger Rabbit movie. The way Droopy's is portrayed in there, that's the Droopy. That's my Droopy. That kind of thing. And
yeah,
would it be great to see cartoons done like that again? Absolutely. The likelihood of it, not so sure.
yeah. It's just knowing animation and the way it works and stuff. I think like the last time, and we had a really good show that worked well was in the '90s when we had shows like Animaniacs and Freakazoid, because they weren't just written by, you know animation writers. They were comedians.
Right.
They were people who understood humor. That I think some of them were artists as well. So like when you look at those shows, like I always looked at the Animaniacs as my Looney Tunes because they parodied the people I knew. Like if Looney Tunes, I have to sometimes think back to my history of who's that they're making fun of, or what movie are they making fun of. Back in the 90s when Animaniacs came out, even in the introduction, they were talking about Bill Clinton. They were talking about people who I was aware of
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
time. And so I always see them as my Looney Tunes, and the same people who worked on that worked on Freakazoid and a few of the other shows that Warner Brothers put out back then.
You reminded me. I have my oldest son is almost 30. He's approaching 30. So when he was little, when kids' cartoon shows would come on, of course, I'd sit him on the couch and we watch cartoons together. And I wasn't, when it came to the newer stuff, I wasn't expecting to get much entertainment myself out of it. You know what I mean? But then we watched an episode of Pinky and the Brain that basically parodied the 1956 Godzilla film with Raymond Burr, and
Okay.
I'm in hysterics because it was just like every way you could parody that film was in that half-hour cartoon, and I'm just laughing. And then some other shows my son liked. One comes to mind called Billy and Mandy. Billy and
Oh, I love
Mandy.
Billy and Mandy.
The way that show was written, it was definitely one of those shows that was like, okay, this is for the kids, and this part's for the adults.
Yeah.
And I never thought, me being in my 30s at the time,
Yes.
that I could watch cartoons with my kids and enjoy on the same level. I mean, at different levels as far as the intellectual, but
Yeah.
to get that kind of enjoyment. When my mother would watch cartoons with me, she was bored out of her mind. It just didn't resonate with her. It
Yeah.
was something to do. But to have that, like Billy and Mandy, I think there was an episode where the devil possessed a bike, Billy's bike, and he was writing these notes. Dear Billy, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Love Trikey. I was
Yeah.
dying. I just thought this was,
A lot of those cartoons from that era, that whole Cartoon Network cartoon stuff that they
yeah,
did,
yeah.
that was my college years. So
Okay.
I was watching that stuff and learning what like I would say the Animaniacs came out, that was like 91, 92. And that cartoon kind of helped shape the humor in animation for me, kind of the stuff I wanted to animate.
Yeah.
But then when the you get to like 96, 97, and those cartoons I think are now the big cartoons, and I'm like, my God, the stuff you could see that in like you know Billy and Mandy, Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, all those cartoons that came, they were all like that.
Yeah.
And and then I think, and I'm like, those were so good. And then later on you get some Butch Hartman shows and his stuff. I mean, I was never a Fairly Odd Parents fan, but I loved Danny Phantom and Tough Puppy. I thought
Mm.
those things were hysterical.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
study, like here I am. I think I was out of school by that time those came on, but I was like, and he worked on some of the other shows, Powerpuff Girls, I think, Johnny Bravo, like all those things, and I'm like, it's just you understand why it's funny because again, the they were artists who created the stories. They
Right.
weren't
Right.
they weren't just people who were there to write and this is how the format of an animated cartoon goes and you need to, because I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 76. All my cartoons in the 80s sold me toys. I watched the Transformers and GI Joe and He-Man and all that stuff. Like everything I watched was a half-hour commercial. I felt that disappeared by the time the 90s came along.
It's funny you say that because when GI Joe and Transformers, first hit, I had, my youngest brother is only 2.5 years younger than me, right?
Yeah.
But they captured him at that perfect spot.
Mhm.
Like when like I was already like ready for high school. I wasn't really paying attention to any of the new cartoons at that point.
Yeah.
I think the only cartoon I made sure I watched before I started high school was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends and the Incredible Hulk Hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think after that that's all I watched at that time.
Yeah.
But his generation, his group of his age group, they just pounced on that stuff and watched it religiously. And
Yeah.
I would try to enjoy this stuff. Like Transformers, perfect example.
Yeah.
I could not get through an episode of that show. Right? I'm just like, oh, this is just it's not.
Yeah.
I'm not getting anything out of it. But yet, when the Transformers the movie came out, the one that was theatrically released, the cartoon, that was one of the most entertaining cartoon movies I had seen in that decade because it was so well written. You could give credit to Leonard Nimoy, whoever, but that's the difference between cranking out a half-hour TV show and actually putting the effort into doing, a full-length movie to hopefully capture a wider audience. I thought that was terrific.
Yeah. No, that's I didn't look at it that because I grew up on it. Like Transformers, one of my all-time favorites. I had a bunch. I even took them apart to try to make new Transformers as a kid.
Yeah.
Now I kick myself because I know the value of a few of them that I had. But
yeah, we've all been down that road.
Yeah. But it's what was I going to say? I love them so much. I tried going back and watching them as an adult, and I'm like, I can't believe I sat through these things. But I love the concept so much that I watched different iterations of them, and other ones I like different versions now better than my childhood. I like the designs from my childhood, but the shows I can't sit there. Same thing happened with Thundercats when it came out on DVD. I'm like, oh my god, this was the greatest show ever. I ran out, bought the DVD collection, came home, sat down and watched like 3 episodes, and I'm like, what the hell is this?
Like, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, we're now in an era where multiple interpretations of our favorite characters coexist and we can just eat it up. I tried explaining this to my kids. I said, listen, when I was your age or younger, a superhero movie was a big event. Superman the movie was a big event. The next DC big movie, with the exception of the 2 Swamp Thing movies, didn't materialize till 10 or 11 years later. Now so your generation is so lucky this way because you guys get multiple superhero movies a year.
Exactly.
This was unheard of. I mean,
I remember in the night, like you're right, it was because I remember in the 90s when Dick Tracy came out, when The Shadow came out, and when The Phantom came out. I loved all 3 of those movies. A lot of people hated them, which is why we never got sequels and stuff. But I thought those were to me those were very fun superhero movies, and and it was just I thought they were going to be bigger events, and they weren't.
No. Again, I mean, when you think about it, Marvel being the superstar studio it is today. You got my youngest son's 19, and I was telling him the other day, I said, listen, when I was 19, Marvel kept trying to put out movies that just never hit theatrically. They put the trailers out, for like The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren and the Captain America movie, and then Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. It's like that stuff never made it past the trailers.
I got them. I don't know if they ever came out on VHS. I know The Punisher did. I don't remember if Captain America did, but
Captain America did come out on home video. I think the only one that's still only in the bootleg circuit is the Corman.
And I watched the Fantastic Four in the bootleg, and I was like, my God, this is so just so bad. But I loved. I gotta say, I loved the Thing. I loved his look of the costume.
Yeah, sure.
But I just remember watching with a friend, and I cracked up at the end when the Human Torch flames on, and I'm going to the air, and I'm like, and I was studying computer animation at the time, and in my head I'm like, they just opened up Poser, and I don't know if you remember that program, but I'm like, they just opened up Poser and just had a character's arms go up. That's all they did. I'm like, this was so bad. But
I
But yeah,
mean,
I mean,
thankfully, what was it? Blade, right? It was Blade
yeah,
that helped turn
Blade,
that around.
yeah, yeah,
So it's yeah, it's funny. I mean, I consider the fact that we probably have it the best we'll ever have it as far as the way the culture has turned toward you know cartoon characters and superhero characters.
absolutely, yeah,
For me personally, there was a time I would absorb anything Batman per se, right?
yeah,
But now I'm very selective. It's like the Filmation stuff I grew up on, I can't even watch it anymore.
yeah.
It's
And I
just
own some of them. I bought out of nostalgia purposes.
yeah, exactly. You have it for nostalgia purposes,
Yeah,
but actually try watching it. You're like, oh my gosh, I really enjoyed this as a kid. But you got to remember, that was the only thing. It was like
yeah,
either that or nothing,
yeah.
right?
No,
Now you can stream, 50 different Batman movies, animated movies, the live
absolutely.
action stuff. I mean, now you have a choice. I like
Yeah,
Christian Bale Batman better than Ben Affleck. I'll watch that today.
yeah,
So when it comes to cartoons, I was hoping that we would have these characters introduced, written by and animated by teams that are very passionate about the characters that would bring back what originally made them so popular in the first place. But I think I saw the Tom and Jerry movie not too long ago, and I
I
saw
haven't
the
seen that.
Peanuts movie not too long ago. It's just not there. The spirit's just not there.
I didn't mind the Peanuts. I didn't watch the Tom and Jerry, but I watched clips of it, and I just couldn't sit through the clips.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Peanuts, I'm a diehard Peanuts fan. I'll watch anything. Like literally, I have a Peanuts blanket behind me here.
There you go.
So it's I'm a big Peanuts fan,
Yeah.
and I will watch anything with it. And I enjoyed the movie for what it was, but you know, I and this is what I said to my wife after we watched it. I said I just prefer them flat. I like them 2D. I didn't
Yeah.
need the 3D animation on it. It's just like when the Smurfs movie came out. All of them. I haven't seen the latest one, but
Mm.
I'm a big fan of Peo, and I'm just not the Smurfs, but Johan and Peewit and Pussycat and Benny Breakiron. Like his characters. I love those books,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I when they came out, I'm like, no, they need to. Some of these characters don't work in 3D, and I think those are the type. I mean, make new stuff and create them like Toy Story. That they have a new one coming out, which I won't say, but
Was it Toy Story 5?
yeah,
Okay, so here, like I said, I'm going to be 56. Toy Story 1 came out when I was 23 or 24.
1994. I remember
Okay,
that.
24.
Yeah,
So there you go. I was like, so half my life ago, these characters have existed, which I get, it's just cool. I mean, longevity works for
yeah,
certain IPs, but, you want the stuff to last because it's good, not
yeah,
because it needs to be cranked out in order to keep a corporation going.
yeah.
That's where it comes down to for me.
And
I mean,
and I feel the same. That's how I feel about Toy Story. Three ended the trilogy perfectly. I think they didn't need to do a fourth and all the little side TV shows they do for Halloween or whatever.
yeah,
But yeah, it's listen, it's an interesting industry and how people are using the character. But I think there will be a turnaround at some point, hopefully in the near future with these types of cartoon characters, because I think and hopefully things like Me TV are going to or Me TV Tunes specifically will change that. More, as people are watching these and realizing, we got to bring a younger audience into that. And I've seen it going to shows where I've drawn characters, or I share a table, somebody like Rich or somebody, and Rich is drawing his Looney Tunes, and little kids come up and they know them. They may not know the exact style he's drawing, but they know him from a Looney Tunes show that's been out.
yeah,
And I'm hoping that the parents are making them watch these cartoons now, because these were, you know I don't know, for me, like, and I don't know if I ever told you the story, but like I used to make the crappiest flip books as a kid.
mm,
I wanted to be an animator so bad, but I didn't understand animation. So when I would play those videos back before I paused, I would sometimes play them back in slow motion, see if I can understand how pages, how the books were flipped, or the drawings were done. And it wasn't until I was in seventh grade and I got the book Chuck Amuck, which was Chuck Jones's
Oh, sure.
biography.
Yeah, check them out.
And there was a flip book of it was a Coyote and Roadrunner,
Mm.
where the Coyote was chasing the Roadrunner. Roadrunner turns around, and the Coyote overshoots him, and he looks down and he falls to the end of the bottom of the book, and he becomes like an accordion little thing, and he walks away. And that's when I learned how animation was done. And I probably destroyed my book flipping that more than I finished reading the book. But I would copy and I would learn, and there is a beauty to the humor that was just in that little what was it, less than an inch high, maybe that drawings. But
Yeah.
there was beauty to it and a humor to it that was lost on a lot now because of the cost of animation for television as opposed to theatrical, and people changing in technology on how they output them, and everything coming down to really saving money. But I think with these new with the availability of the old cartoons out there, if we could just get the people to watch them and see them, there will be people saying these are better than what we're looking at, and they want them again. And it just, the audience just needs to make some noise for it, I think.
And the kids get the way the characters have evolved over the years too. It's not like, I can't remember which Porky Pig short it was, but I remember one time watching Looney Tunes in syndication when I was maybe a preteen, and they started airing some of the older ones where Porky's really a huge looking pig with a very long snout and stuff, and I said, that's not Porky Pig, and then you find out, oh yeah, that's the way he looked at first, and then he slowly evolved to what we know today. Kids today, or today's audiences, they're so used to the multiverse, and they're so used to everybody's interpretation of characters as unique, that they're not afraid of that kind of thing anymore. So this is the time to do that kind of stuff. Bring back Droopy, bring back the original Tom and Jerry, bring it all back. I would love to see new stuff that's good quality, that's funny. That's the way to do it.
I agree 100%. I think on that note, we should kind of wrap up for tonight.
Sure.
Listen, I'd love to have you back, talk about other projects and other, things that you worked on, or new stuff that you've, that you're going to be working on. I think that sounds like a fun, interesting conversation. I, enjoy talking to you about this stuff here. I'm sure we'll have another conversation about it in the future.
So. Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I wanted to say was, people have outreached to me like, why isn't there a trade paperback collection of all these Tex Avery books in one volume? And unfortunately, there's a lot of legal, rigmarole that has prevented these stories from being reprinted again. I even tried a few years ago to try to get the rights to reproduce these myself under my publishing company, but everything is in legal mumbo jumbo, and it's too bad, because the stuff is good and it deserves to be out there. And we had stories that actually didn't get printed because the series ended before they were published. So it'd be great to have all that bonus material and everything. And I still have a lot of things from those days, like interviews with some of the creators and stuff that worked on the stories. It'd be great to put all that together for today's audience to be able to read and enjoy it. But what I can say for the people for now have reached out asking that, you can fortunately find these comics relatively inexpensively on websites like My Comic Shop and Mile High Comics and things. So if you're interested, go check them out that way until we figure out a way to collect these stuff in one book.
I'm going to have to look through what I own and see about getting more of them, because I know I didn't read them all. So
yeah. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. Maybe one day there'll be an artist edition of all the Tex Avery stuff.
That'd be great. All
You
right.
know, Bill Morrison, he sold most of his, if not all of his covers, because I know a couple of people that own some of his pieces. Trying to get all that stuff back together to rescan, that would be a mammoth project in itself.
I'd love just to see them in person.
Yeah,
Covers
yeah,
of
yeah.
the original art. Yeah, you should get people together if you can and do a museum piece on it. I don't know. Would that be a an option? Like do an exhibit of comic art of Droopy,
You
or is
never
there a
know.
licensing thing with
It's
that?
just it was funny because I'll just say this real quickly. It's funny
Yeah,
because when you hold all this great, beautiful original art in your hand before it's sent off to the stat room to be
yeah,
photographed
yeah.
and scanned, it was just an amazing experience to hold some of that original art, and like I said, hopefully the stuff that has been sold is in the hands of collectors and people that are really going to take care of it and cherish it. When I go to conventions and there's original art dealers, I'm asking all the time, any pages from that stuff show up yet? And the answer is always no. So that leads me to believe that the people who did buy it, are keeping it, which is nice. Nice
Yeah,
stuff. So,
that's a nice thought.
so thank you for having me on again, Michael. I
Oh,
appreciate
anytime, anytime. Definitely doing it again.
it. Okay,
Um,
awesome.
and so, oh, by the way, before I let you go, how can people find you if they want to follow you anywhere? Or
Oh, okay. Well, you can find me on Facebook under Robert V. Conte. Very easy to find. Also, that way on LinkedIn, any professional inquiries can reach me on LinkedIn. And I have a website called studiochikara.com, STUDIOCHIKARA.com. And that'll keep you posted on stuff that's in the works.
awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. Let me just say goodbye to my audience. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And like I said in the beginning of the show, if you're in the Allentown, PA area, I will be at Lehigh Valley Comic Con this Saturday, June 6th and 7th, Saturday and Sunday. I'll be at the Kid in a Comic newspaper table. And the following weekend, I will be at the Undiscovered Realm Comic Con at the County Center in White Plains, New York. So you can find me there. I'll be selling prints and some artwork because I don't have books right now. So I will see you all, you guys, next week where I have another guest. And